Hey everybody, welcome back to Doc's Autos. Today we are putting our 440 engine for our 72 Challenger project back together. Stay tuned. That is right, we are putting our engine back together. It was never fully disassembled. It's not a rebuild, it's more of kind of a refresh and putting lipstick on a pig. We have this, well, behind me, freshly painted, over here, freshly painted 440 engine and a bunch of new parts over here. We have, of course, a brand new oil pan. It's not dented. New valve covers. We have a whole Felpro gasket kit. We have a new windage tray to go along with the oil pan and a bunch of other parts hiding over here as well. So let's just kind of get to it. That's right, we are putting the engine back together. It's never fully taken apart, but it's more dressed up. And for the whole project in general, there's a link up here for a playlist, how we've gotten to this point. Long story short, Buddy Darren's had this car since his Navy days, and it's been in storage and not really running since he put a new engine in it 20, 30 years ago. I think 89 was the last time it was tagged. And he wants to get it back on the road, take it to car shows, parades, just something the family can enjoy. So he left it with me. I don't know why. But we have a bunch of parts to go back on the engine. One step closer to getting it back in the car. Now, the car still needs a lot of other work, as you've seen. Well, if you look at the other videos, you'll see what's been done and what still needs to be done, and that's a lot. But today, we're going to try and get the engine put back together, or at least all of these parts on it. We've got engine mounts, new ARP intake, bolts, valve covers, a Felpro gasket kit, and just a whole bunch of stuff. Now, there are some new parts we put on the car. Originally, we've got a new carburetor hiding over there. We did put in, brand new plugs when the car came here a couple of years ago, and it really hasn't ever left the property. But they're kind of dirty, just because the car leaked, and really it's a brand new spark plug, but it's dirty. So we're going to quick clean these up. Thankfully, the good folks over at Super Clean have helped keep my shop stocked full of cleaning goodies, whether it's their cleaners, degreasers, the floor absorbent. Has all been very helpful around here, and we're going to use that today to go ahead and get these spark plugs cleaned up. Still got to run out and grab a gallon jug, but for right now, I think this should work for us. Ran out to Harbor Freight for an ultrasonic cleaner to get a lot of the other hardware cleaned up. Recently for the engine to get everything prepped for paint, all the bolts and hardware, brackets and everything. And I ended up forgetting to film that, but these were the bolts on the transmission pan, or not transmission pan, the oil pan, and they were just dirty and disgusting and caked full of crap. And I sent them around in here for, 5-8 minutes, brushed them off, and they're nice and clean. So now I can get those painted up and put back when we get the oil pan back on the car. But what I want to do quick here, take a couple of our spark plugs, set them in here and let it run. A, to see how cool this cleaner is, and B, to kind of show off how awesome some of the super clean stuff is. So I'm going to put in 4 of the plugs, set the timer, and let it do its thing. Should plug it in first. So I'll set my timer for, say, 5 minutes. Put our top on, hit the heat, let it do its thing. And if you look in here, you can see some bubbles. You can see all the dirt and sludge just coming right off those plugs. Well, let's give it its 5 minutes and we'll see what it looks like when it's done.
Few inches later.
Alrighty, our time is done here with our first round of the plugs. Let's take a look at what them looks like. Look at that. If we can get a focus, there we go. Tell me that does not look darn near brand new. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up the other 4 plugs. We're going to go ahead and get them stuck back in the engine and keep on moving. Alrighty, so we've got our spark plugs cleaned and put in, and 2 things I want to do before I do much else. 1, put the fuel pump in, and 2nd, I want to put the oil pump in, and then I have some break-in oil on the way here from O'Reilly's. That'll be here tomorrow, and go ahead and manually crank over the oil pump. Just make sure I've got oil coming out of all the places that it should be before we go ahead and start putting everything back on, the valve covers, valley pan gasket, and everything like that. I figure as long as everything is off, we may as well take a few minutes just to make sure everything is functioning as it should. After all, the engine did sit for, a couple of decades, and aside from what we ran it in the garage here or in the shop, we don't really know anything about the internals. So we're going to go ahead, get those couple of pumps put on, and come back with that oil. So I've got all of my cards here in the furnace. The cards here with these have the fuel pump and the distributor bolt on it, oil pump bolts here. But for now, we're going to look at getting the fuel pump put in and kind of a test to see how well these bolts will hold up with the paint on it. We've got our fuel pump gasket, nothing big there. I'm going to go ahead and put just a little dollop of blue thread lock on all the hardware here, just to be sure. Maybe. That was a mess. Well, now I've got thread lock on the floor. We've got our pump, we've got our gasket. There we go. Our hardware. Now the hardware was kind of challenging to get out. So let's hope it goes in a little easier than it came out, just due to the hardware and getting a wrench back here. All right, I'm going to find my wrench, get that tightened up, we'll move on. All right, so we've got our oil pump here ready to go on. Find my longest hole here. There it is. Feed him through. We've got our new gasket here as well. Now this is a nearly new oil pump. We got it last spring? No. Summer of 2021. Because the old one was frozen and it would spew oil out over everything. So, not terribly difficult. Set it in, start your hardware, watch out for your gasket. And tighten things down. All right, we'll go ahead and snug everything up. Alrighty, that's pretty easy. We've got our oil filter to go find, put that on. And after that, we've got our windage tray, our oil pan to put on. Then we're gonna wait for our oil to show up. But for right now, let me find the oil filter. Alrighty, you've got just a little dab of oil to get the new rubber gasket lubricated to put on. New oil filter here. Darren picked up a K&N. Look at that, ready to go. Just go and wet that up a little bit. There we go. Twist it on. And there we go. So for now, I'm going to wait for the oil, and I'll go ahead and get the rest of our bottom end stuff put on and get some oil in here. Alrighty, we're back another day here, and what I want to do now is work on getting the oil pan on, the windage tray, and then getting some oil in here to make sure that everything is flowing, all the lubrication points are doing what they should. But before we do that, I've got to get the timing cover on so I can get the oil pan on. And to do that, we've got to take this off. We've got our timing cover here. We've already got our new seal pressed in from the back of here. Very simple process. Just if you've got a press, you can use that. Or on a flat surface, I took a dead blow hammer and just lightly tapped it in until it was fully seated, and we're good to go. So let's take off more of our masking here and see what it looks like. You know, I've seen some people, they mask everything off what we've done here. Some people will assemble most of the engine and then spray it with all the hardware on it, you know, aside from fuel pump and oil filter and whatnot. I chose, since we had everything off, to go ahead and paint it in as many pieces as possible. Just make sure I could get down here in these little crevices and cracks on behind everything, just to help a little better paint coverage and hopefully a little better final product. So we got everything uncovered here. This was new when the engine was rebuilt. Again, has literally no time on it. There's a little slack here, a little slack here. That should be just fine. Timing cover. That'll fit on right here. We have our gasket to put on first, so let's look at getting that done. This should just lay right over here. There's a couple of pegs. But I'm going to put just a tad bit of goo on here to help hold the gasket in place to make sure when it's fit, it doesn't sneak in here anywhere or poke out and leave any areas for leakage to happen. So, get a little bit of goo on there, and we'll get this gasket on there. Again, I'm just going to put the smallest bit of goo on here and then smooth it out with my finger for a nice even application. Again, we're not using this as an actual sealant. That's what our gasket is for, but we are using it to help hold the gasket in place. And if we do have the added benefit of a little extra help for keeping all the fluids where they should be, well, that's That's fine by me. But that's not the primary purpose here. Alrighty, let's grab our gasket. All right, everything here looks to be in place. Alrighty, well, I found my timing cover bolts and wish the engine was up about 3 feet higher because this makes my knees hurt down here. Anyways, I'll quit complaining. We've got our timing cover. We'll set it back on here. We've got the couple of pegs. One peg, two peg. And again, we want to make sure that our gasket is not poking through anywhere. A little bit of a movement right in here. And the same here. You don't want to tear that gasket when you're putting your bolts in. Anywho, I'm going to go ahead and get these run in. And before I do anything else, we're going to let this cure up. A little bit of blue thread lock. And then we can come back and put our windage tray on and our oil pan. These little plastic or cardboard trays work pretty well for marking out your hardware. I just used scrap cardboard from soda cases or diaper boxes or whatever the case may be, Amazon boxes, just so you've got a way to mark your bolts, especially if some of them came out, like the oil pan or intake bolts, for example. If you had different length bolts and different pieces of a piece of hardware, you want to make sure you end up putting those back in the right spot. So that's kind of one handy thing. And then if you are painting them like I did, that helps keep them all separate and organized and easy to paint. All right, got 1/2 inch and 9/16. So let me run these in if I, don't fall over. I'm going to start from the middle and work my way out. Now, where is my 1/2 inch? Probably put it away. Alrighty, now, so you're not looking at my belly. Of course, looking at my face may not be much better, but maybe some of you appreciate that. Anyways, we're going to get these snugged up. I'll double check on the torque specs for these. Get those run in as well. But for now, I've got to run to the O'Reilly store, pick up some brake-in oil for the car here, and pick up some oil for the wife's Outback because it's time for an oil change for her car. So we'll come back in a bit. Alrighty, we're going to put on our windage tray and our oil pan. We have gone ahead and cleaned and prepped our surface of the block underneath there. I can't flip the engine over like I've said before, so it's really not a lot I can show you. But this specific windage tray we got from Summit, just one of their generic kit parts things, is sort of a ABS plastic material, not metal. So it has a gasket built into it. And the directions specifically say do not add any additional RTV sealant or gasketing because it's built in, with the exception of the joint here at the timing cover on the front or the saddle for the crank on the rear of the engine. That would be really the only place that they would suggest adding anything. And if you do, put a little dab in there, make sure it's cured, and then you can go ahead and put everything together. Now we have windage tray, and we have our oil pan, and everything tucks up in place with a bunch of bolts. Like I said, really, I'll tip the camera down so you can watch me, but there's really not a lot for you to see. Alrighty, so we got our oil pan on with the windage tray, and we torqued everything down to about 20 pounds, foot-pounds. I didn't see anything listed in the documentation, doing a little checking, but the factory stuff should be about 15, 20 pounds, what I read online. So we will see. I reached out to Summit to see if they have any official feedback on what that torque spec should be, and we'll go ahead and make that change if needed. Oil pan, drain plug is in, torqued down to 20 pounds, plus a hair more. And I think now we're ready to dump some of this Lucas oil in here. Alrighty, it is time to finally get some oil in the old engine here. And we've got a jug of the Lucas break-in oil. So I'll go ahead and add that in here. Then I want to go ahead and turn over that oil pump by hand and get oil flowing through here. So we'll uncap our valley, take our tape off here of our heads, and just take a look. All right, everything here looks pretty good. We have gone ahead already and blown out the valley here for the air compressor, made sure we've gotten all of our last remaining anything out of here before we put our oil pan on. So everything here should be clean to go, clean and good to go. And yeah, I'm gonna pour a little oil down the valley here on all of our push rods and down on our cam, and just get a little bit of lubrication going there before I dump the rest of it down and start spinning this thing over. All right, now we're going to pull out our gear going down into the oil pump. Make sure you're pulling out, remember where the notch is here, so when you put your gear back in, it is still in time. So when you put your distributor in, everything is as it was. So ours right now is 3 in the 9 position, so we'll pull it out. All right, I had to find my rod. Pretty much just a rod that matches up with the same pattern as the gear there. Throw it on your cordless drill. Get it down into the pump here and turn. Battery's dead, but run your drill, in this case counterclockwise, get the pump moving. You could hear the RPMs. Like I was saying, you could hear the RPMs as soon as we started to build pressure in that pump. So we'll give it a little spin here. Yep, we can see everything coming out of lifters here. Of course, my batteries are horrible, so we're going to go ahead, keep spinning this around, and maybe try and find a different drill. Alrighty, we've gone ahead and run that oil pump, got everything lubricated around in the engine. I'm gonna go ahead and throw our gear back in here. Remember, this was pointed right at the 3 and 9. Yeah, if you can see it. Nope, it's not. It's gonna focus on me and not the gear. Silly gear. Anyways, there's a little bit of a, you can kind of see it right in there. It's a slot. And that has to remain between 3 and the 9 on the clock when we put it back in. Go ahead and get that in and done. There we go, that's in now that I'm dirty. All right, so our next plan of attack here is our Felpro valley pan gasket to be put in. We have the gasket itself that I've painted up nice and orange as well. We have our 2 valley pan caps that go on either end of the block, and a little directions here. Basically it says this: apply a thin coat of sealer such as around the intake ports on the underside of the gasket to prevent vacuum loss, and then create the manifold end seals by running a thin bead of the gasket material starting here, running across the front and then up onto the head, and then the same thing across the back. And because we have this little seam right here between the block and the head, they want to make sure that we are going to create a good seal with a little bit of that Felpro gasket material. Just gray RTV, and make sure we're not going to have any air escaping past there, creating vacuum leaks, whatever. And then, as it said, as I drop it, on the inside, or underside, put a little bead around here. And then basically, this gets set on top. And the ends get bolted down. Your intake gets put on and bolted down. So that is the process we're going to do. Let's just get it done. Alrighty, we've got our valley pan gasket sealed up here with the RTV. We've got a bead across the front and the back. And now we set it down, and here's where it gets a little bit messy. Because these actually need to be bent up quite a bit more. But of course, now that I've already stuck the goo on here, that makes it challenging. So we're just going to set it on and clean up our mess after the fact, I think. And we do have our brackets here, and we have our valley pan bolts. Oh, those are 7/16. Alrighty, I'm going to quick check the torque specs on those. Alright, these say 40 pounds. Go ahead and adjust our furnace. There we go, 40 pounds. Alrighty, now we're going to go ahead, grab our intake and set that on top. We've got a new set of, I believe they're ARP, yep, ARP intake bolts, so we'll put those on too and get those torqued down. Alrighty, we've got our new bolts here for our intake. Hopefully they are a match, it says they are. They seem to go in, so here are 3/8, so I'm just going to run them in. You can see a few places where I did not paint far enough. I just kind of over masked, so I'll go ahead. I've got a couple of bolts I'm going to end up touching up some of the nicks on from running them in, so I'll just touch this up with a little paint and it'll look great. Did go ahead and make sure that the intake is on the correct direction. We've got our notation up here for our distributor rotation direction. And this hole back here is for a brake booster, and for right now we are undetermined what our brake situation is going to be, so that's just going to get plugged up for the moment. Alrighty, there's that. Let's go ahead track down our distributor. Alrighty, here is our distributor. Got an O-ring. I'm going to find the new O-ring. I think I have one here in the kit. All right, we indeed have a little bag of O-rings. And it looks like I do have one here for the distributor right here. Got here, it should just come off and grab a little pick or something, and wherever my little pick went, there it is. So much like your oil filter, when you're changing that in your car, off it comes. Let's see. I'm gonna get a little drop of oil on my finger. We can put on this new gasket just to help that go on. Hopefully I can grab a little more out of the bottom here. Yep, there we go. There we go. Nothing too hard there. Slide it back over and on. There we go. There we go. Now, who knows if this is where it should be. It's probably moved. I can go back and look at other pictures from the past. But for now, get the oil off my hands. Got our freshly painted bracket and our bolt. I may end up repainting that black, who knows. Grab my 1/2 inch, snug that up, and there we go. All right, I'm gonna quick clean up some of my gasket mess around here, and I'll come back, we'll get our valve covers on. Alrighty, well, I also went ahead and quick dropped on our Holley 650. We do need to get a better system for the fuel delivery. This was just a cheap, can we get it running, does the car still work type of deal. When we started working on it a couple years ago. So this will get cleaned up with something that's not, you know, bent in a vise to fit and not interfere with the intake and everything. So there, let's find some better plumbing for this. And now we're going to go ahead, set on our valve covers. I'm not going to tighten them down yet because I believe I'm going to refinish the hardware. The hardware that came off, some of them were black, some of them were orange, and I'm going to go ahead and get everything matched up. But I want to at least get them on, button up all the holes where stuff can fall into. I've got a couple of nice big beefy cork gaskets. You can set those in place. Alrighty, and Darren picked up a set of just basic Edelbrock Signature Series valve covers. Nothing, looks like we already have our baffles in here. Nothing I need to do there. Got a couple of grommets for breather or oil fill cover. So it looks like we needed to grab a couple of PCV valves for this. We don't have any. We've got some that came off the old valve covers, which we can use, but if we can find something a little prettier, I'd like to do that. There you go, look at these. Those are nice. All right. Just set it on here. Got a peg there. And a peg here, here. Oh, that looks pretty nice, that's for sure. And like I said, here's the hardware that came off originally. It's not the prettiest. So we'll go ahead and get that cleaned up. But again, I just wanted to get this on right now and cover up all of our exposed holes. Alrighty, it is on. Look at that. Those look pretty good. Now, again, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with the hardware. If I'm going to make them orange or black, I'll take them back off and get them cleaned up and painted whichever color. Then I'll go ahead and get everything tightened down, get that gasket tucked in here everywhere, and tighten down the spec. But for now, I'm not going to crush that thing yet because it's going to come off. So we got more parts. So let's get something easy out of the way. We've got the engine mounts. Like I said, we've got our engine mounts. Went ahead and got new rubbers. We've got these cleaned and painted up. The engine mounts are from Anchor. I don't think anything special. But we go ahead and put these back on. They're tough to see on the side here. Pretty much they fit in here somehow. There we go. I'll figure it out. Maybe, maybe not. There we go. I'm gonna go double check pictures, but these go on here. And they fit, oh, that's the wrong side. If you can kind of see, they fit on to here and then onto the engine itself. And there we go. So I'm going to quick double check my pictures, make sure these are going on the right direction, and then we'll come back and got our harmonic balancer yet, our water pump assembly to get that on, and then our front brackets and alternator and power steering pump, and that's going to wrap it up. Alrighty, we're getting closer. I just went ahead and threw on those engine mounts. There's nothing you can see really from up here, and really it's 3 bolts and they're on. So nothing big there, but the next thing we're going to do is throw on our water pump housing and the water pump. We've got our gaskets here. I'm going to throw a little bit of the Permatex on the surface, A, to help hold it in place, and B, to add a little extra protection for making a good seal on those joints. So nothing big, just slather a little bit on here. We've got one gasket we're going to set in place. Got the other one set in place as well. Backwards. There we go. I'm going to go throw a little bit of the Permatex on our water pump housing, and then we'll slap it right on. Alrighty, well, we'll see if we get these back in the right place. There we go. One here. One here. Grab our other 2 bolts. Maybe I'll tip you down just a hair so you can see more what I'm doing. Alright, then we've got another one goes in here. Oh, again, I'm going to quick check my pictures because there are other things that go on the front of here, brackets for the alternator, the power steering pump, and there's a bunch of holes, and just want to make sure everything gets in the right place while my gasket sealer is still pliable. So hold on. All right, the next thing we're going to do real quick is swap out the old temperature sensor with a new one. It's already got Teflon tape on it. It's ready to go. The old one, I don't know that it worked or not, because A, we never really ran the car long enough to get it up to temperature, and I don't know if the gauge actually worked or was wired up to anything. So we are just going to put in a new one and save ourselves the trouble of worrying if it will actually work or not. So next thing I want to do here is throw on the thermostat. So we've got a new gasket, a new thermostat, and our thermostat housing. So more of our RTV, a gasket, more RTV, and then our thermostat. We've got our gasket, also part of that Felpro kit, so that's nice to have. We've got our water pump housing. I'm going to go ahead and throw a little more of the gray goo on this. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and throw some goo on our thermostat cover, and we've got our thermostat set in here. It only goes in one way really, so I'm just going to go ahead and set our thermostat housing on top. We do have a couple of bolts here with the lock washer. We'll go ahead and get those tightened down. I'm going to double check what these torque settings are. I think they're 30 pounds. They are indeed 30 pounds. There we go. There we go. Yep. 30 pounds for that. And next we've got our water pump itself to put on. Now the Felpro kit came with a gasket, but the pump itself also came with a gasket, so I'm going to use the one that came with the pump itself. And again, a little bit of RTV, a little bit of gasket, a little more RTV, and then the water pump. So I'm just going to go ahead and get that done for us. Alrighty, we'll just go ahead and I'll go over here. Go ahead and set this on here in place for the moment. Get you stuck in place for your final home. Now, the water pump itself does have a little bit of a orientation to it, and you can see that on the water pump assembly or housing itself. There's a little notch that matches up with this, so everything fits in just like this. So go ahead and throw a little bit of goo on here. Pretty easy to do. You know, some guys are just gonna slather on gobs and gobs of silicone and it squeezes out from everywhere and then you've just got a big mess to clean up. I probably am a little thin on the goo side, so I'm throwing a little more on, but especially don't want to get anything caught up in the water pump or anything like that, or the thermostat, because you'd hate to have that for some reason stick open or stick shut, or worse, somehow obstruct this water pump from doing its function. But I think we're good now. We've got a good coat of our RTV. Go ahead, find our notch, get a few of our bolts. And the tiny humans are coming in from playing outside.
Where's Mom? Yeah.
Alrighty, we've got this on, torqued down to 30 pounds. This thing still spins freely, so I didn't get any goo in there, so that's a good thing. Don't have a lot of extra stuff squeezing out, so that also is good. And we're almost out of parts to put on. I've got the alternator bracket, the power steering bracket, and I've got 2 of those bolts that still bolt into the water pump housing. So I want to get those put in quickly while our goo is still pliable, and then we're almost going to wrap this up. All right, I'm looking at my pictures here. You can see when I took things apart, look at that. Documenting what I'm doing so that, hey, if I need to recall what I did, it's easier than scratching my head for an hour going, what did I do? So what I've got here, I think, is a bracket, the adjustment thingamajinger. This goes through first, I believe. Then we have our adjustment, and we have our spacer. And then I believe this goes into here, like that. Not quite. There we go, that's better. And then we also have another bolt, looking at my pictures, that had a washer on it. And this guy here, all right. This one here appears to go not into there. Nope. I gotta figure out what bolt goes on there. Found it, but I did not get it painted black. So I'll have to come back and clean that up. He goes in here. Now, grab my alternator, hang this on here, and that should confirm everything is lined up where it should be. Here we go. I don't know where my 9/16 wrench went. I just had it. Oh well. Let's see, this is tightened up. This will be tightened up. Alrighty, the alternator is on. I think it works. Again, didn't have any gauges hooked up, so it might not be actually charging the car. Anyways, we have our power steering bracket to put back on, so let me dig up the picture for that and get that on there. Alrighty, again, we got a picture here. Look at that. That's what it looked like. And there's a few parts to this. But I think I just need to put on this one bracket for now that goes here and here. That's going to allow me to get the other bolt on here for the water pump housing. Yep. All right. One last check of 30. And there we go. Now, I'm not going to put the power steering pump on yet. That may be getting sent out to be rebuilt. Not sure yet. But I'm going to leave, I'll put the other bracket on here for right now just because I can, I guess. One less thing to lose. This, I believe, goes in like this. Go ahead and stick him in here quick. All right, I gotta find one more bracket, then I'll be done with that. All right, the last thing we've got left to do here is put our harmonic balancer on. And our pulley. Alrighty. What am I going to look for? Here's our harmonic balancer. And I'm going to put a little bit of lube. There's a new seal in here. So I'm going to put a little lube on here, oil, just to help guide that in. And then also a little bit of grease on the crank, on the balancer itself to help it slide onto the shaft. And put that on. Let's see. We have our seal. Gonna get this lubed up so it slides on there. And then in here as well. So hopefully everything is nice and lubricated. See if we can get it to slide on. It is keyed, so be mindful of that. In it goes. So I'm going to give that, find my nut, get that back on there, and pull it on. All right, the tiny humans came in from outside. So I had to turn off the camera for a minute and get them situated and back indoors. But we got our balancer on. We're just cranking it down, and again, I will have to clean up this giant nut and either turn it black or orange. Depends what I decide to do. And this thing should get 135 foot-pounds of torque. So, big guy. Now let's see if this will go. Just like that. Now last we have our main pulley that goes on our harmonic balancer. These here are pretty simple. Alrighty, there we go, and I've managed to become quite warm. Anyways, aside from a few touch-up things, a few paint things that I over-taped or touch up, like those valve cover bolts, the engine is put together. Now, of course, we've still got a lot of work to do to get this back in the car. We need a lot of work in the engine bay, which is going to be coming up soon. But for now, like I say, I'm going to get this thing touched up and covered up and just kind of forget about it until the work in the engine bay is done and we're ready to stab this thing back in the car. I did get word back the transmission, that 727, is rebuilt and is functional and is good to go. So we'll be picking that up again sometime in the near future and sticking that in the corner too. But for right now, thanks for sticking along with this one. It's been long, but we got everything put back together and we're good to go. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel, share us out with your friends, like the video. That really helps YouTube put this in front of more people, and the more people that see it, the more subscribers we get, and the snowball of YouTube ad revenue, sponsorships, more projects, neat projects, fun projects. You get the drill. So until we come back with, I think we'll come back with, I don't know, maybe something on the car itself, maybe the headers. I'm not sure, but this big milestone is accomplished. And again, one more thing checked off in getting this thing back together for Darren. We'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.